Well, good afternoon, folks. It's Chris here from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mere, Alberta. I came on to do a quick live stream because we just got the ruling back from Justice Feasby regarding the question of the constitutionality of the referendum question presented by Mitch Sylvester on behalf of the Alberta Prosperity Project. The ruling is being touted as some sort of victory for the status quo, some sort of forever tyranny banner that they're flying, trying to say, "Oh, you're never going to have an independent Alberta because the judge ruled this." That's not what this means. That's not what this means at all. So I'm going to try and break this down for you. Now, keep in mind, I came to this completely unprepared. I read the ruling, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going off the cuff here. I don't have anything prepared, but I'm going to give you my raw and unfiltered opinion as to what this ruling means for you, for me, and for the independence movement. So the ruling, let me bring it up here. I'm actually going to read it to you because I doubt you're going to be able to read it on the screen. So I'll read it to you. In the ruling, Justice Feasby says, the referendum proponent's constitutional referendum proposal contravenes Constitution Act 1982, sections 1 to 35. We knew that. Because independence would require the replacement of the Canadian Constitution, including the identified sections, with a new Alberta Constitution. Constitution Act 1982 guarantees the rights in the Charter. What will replace charter rights in an independent Alberta cannot be known. So if Alberta were to become independent, it could not be said that the charter rights are guaranteed in the sense provided for in Constitution Act 1982, Section 1. To find, as this decision has found, that the constitutional referendum proposal contravenes Constitution Act 1982 because it does not guarantee the rights specified therein, does not mean that a constitution for an independent Alberta would be inferior to the Constitution Act 1982, only that it would be different. 245, treaty rights are recognized and affirmed, not guaranteed, and they are incorporated by reference, not specified. These are distinctions without a difference. Perhaps an independent Alberta would adopt a provision like Constitution Act 1982, Section 35, and recognize and affirm treaty rights, but for the reasons explained above, Alberta cannot succeed to the numbered treaties without the consent of First Nations. Moreover, this decision has concluded that the transformation of provincial and territorial borders into international borders would contravene the numbered treaties by specifically impairing the exercise of treaty rights by First Nations. Now, at first glance, you might be thinking, oh man, this is horrible. We'll never get the question. No, that's not it at all. I want to point out one major thing that isn't discussed here. And that is, we're not asking. That's the first part. We are not asking. We are not asking to be under the Canadian Constitution any longer. We are demanding that Alberta, the people of Alberta, write their own constitution by the people, for the people, that outlines how the government may act, that outlines the government's relationship with the people, not how we may act and what our relationship with government is. So that's the big, broad, overarching thing here, is that we don't want the Canadian Constitution. We want a new Alberta Constitution. We want a constitution that will serve us. We want a constitution that will protect Albertans, the new nation of Alberta, from the type of things that we saw in the last 4 or 5 years. So that's the big part of this. Now, to get a little deeper in it, what Feasby is saying is that because the Constitution says, because the Constitution guarantees the rights in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, if there is no Constitution, there is no guarantee, and therefore that's not constitutional. That's completely fine. An independent Alberta will have a much better constitution and some sort of a Charter of Rights and Freedoms that is superior to what we have right now. So that is it's not a roadblock. It's just a observation about something that would naturally occur anyway. Regarding the treaty rights, he mentions that treaty rights are recognized and affirmed, not guaranteed. Now, the courts have upheld the guarantee, and that's why he says these are distinctions without a difference. But what I want to point out here is the treaties that were signed are between the federal government and the Treaty Indians. They're not provincial government things. It doesn't give those people anything at all. You think that the federal government gave Treaty Indians that land? No, they didn't. They gave them custodial ownership of it, meaning that they could occupy that land and live however they wanted and govern themselves on that land, but it's not theirs. It belongs to the federal government. And these are one of the things that would, for sure, certainly need to be negotiated in a new independent nation of Alberta. So the Treaty Indians in this province would have a choice to make. Do they want to continue under the same status quo scenario that they've had with the federal government for years that has, I'm not even going to be sarcastic about it, it has not served them well? Or do they want to renegotiate and enter into a new prosperous future with the nation of Alberta? That's up to them. Nobody has ever said that we want to just cancel treaties or anything like that. The treaties, they're contracts that have to be respected. We get that. As for international travel, there's already provisions within international travel, specifically the US and Canadian borders, that allow Treaty Indians to travel back and forth unimpeded. That's just, it's a no-brainer. Like, why would we not offer the same rights as they have now? This isn't a roadblock, it's not an obstacle, it's simply an observation. Now I want to point out that this is exactly why the government just amended the Citizens Initiative Referendum Act. It's because we've been saying this, like, no, it doesn't have to be a constitutional question because we're not asking to be under the Constitution. This is the will of the people. It's the will of the people of Alberta saying, we do not want to be under this Constitution anymore. We want our new Constitution. We want our new nation. So therefore, the old Constitution, the Constitution Act 1982, that's been set aside for the sniffles, by the way, is of no consequence to us. We're not interested in that. So I hope that's explained it at least a little bit. I also want to point out that by this logic in that question, that would mean that any question from any province on the topic of secession or independence for that province to become their own nation would be considered unconstitutional because, for the reasons above, it's not going to guarantee that the charter rights that the Constitution guarantees. But we would have something better. That's the point. It's not just that Justice Feasby is saying, no, Alberta can't ask the people. He's saying this is the reality of this question from the perspective of the Constitution. And I see Greg Anderson says, you really think you're a genius, hey? No, I don't think I'm a genius, but I can use my brain, unlike some dipshits that troll people's Facebook pages for no reason other than to look like complete retards in the grand scope of things. So thank you for coming, Greg, and thank you for saying that I'm a genius. I appreciate that. Next, this position on this ruling, it actually contradicts the clarity reference by the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court says if there's a clear question and a clear answer, then yes, of course, you can ask. So the Supreme Court of Canada is saying, yes, you can ask the question, and there is a clear path to secession. And our provincial court is saying, no, you can't ask the question because it's unconstitutional. Those two things don't jive. They cannot both be true at the same time. So there's that. When you talk about international norms, there have been a number of countries that have split into different nations. And there have been a number of countries that have had to rewrite their constitutions because the new nation is no longer under the old constitution. The question would have been unconstitutional from the perspective of the originating constitution, and yet they did it anyway, because the Constitution is simply a reflection, or supposed to be a reflection, of what the society of which the Constitution is the supreme law wants. So if you want X, Y, Z in the Constitution, the people are supposed to say, we want this. So stands to reason that if a nation splits into two and the people want some type of a constitution that's different than the other one, the old constitution becomes irrelevant, because the constitution is the will of the people. And when the will of the people changes, that's when the constitution changes. And that's what we're talking about in an independent Alberta. Now, there's a difference between a court ruling on wording and banning the question itself. It is very important to understand that the question itself has not been banned. If we were under the old legislation that said that any question that's put to referendum has to be constitutional, then our own law in the province of Alberta would have precluded us from asking that particular question. But because our government has recognized that these questions have nothing to do with the originating constitution and everything to do with the will of the people, they've changed it because they understand this as well. Constitutional change always begins with a political mandate. It's not a pre-written constitution. So in a new nation of Alberta, we will have a new constitution that we write. There's no way of knowing what it is. So any court right now that's ruling on whether our charter rights are going to exist in an independent Alberta or not, they can't, because they don't know, and they won't know until we have a constitutional convention. But I will point out that a group of very, very bright people within the Alberta Prosperity Project and some friends from external to the project locked themselves in a room for a weekend and wrote a draft constitution. And that's still being adjusted. Like, there's lots of things to do. But the idea is we want to make sure, and when I say we, I mean the independence-minded Albertans, we want to make sure that when we have this referendum, people can look at something and they can start to understand what a new Alberta Constitution could be, what we could have. That's a big question right now. Oh, what are you going to do for Constitution? Well, I can tell you what we're not going to do. We're not going to have a Constitution that doesn't actually guarantee what it says it guarantees. And I felt that. I saw it. The Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, guarantees me the right to protest. Well, I was arrested and thrown in jail in Canada for protesting. Our Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees thought, religious expression. And we have pastors that were arrested for worshiping, for holding church services. We have people who were fined, ticketed, and even arrested for attending worship services. So no, our Constitution doesn't guarantee all those things. And by the same logic that Justice Feasby has here, if our Constitution isn't actually guaranteeing those things, our Constitution isn't constitutional in itself. But that's another rabbit hole. Independence is a democratic question. It's not a constitutional question. It's the will of the people. Independence, a constitution, they are both based on the will of the people. They're not pre-written things that can't change. If 90% of Canada agreed that they wanted to change the Canadian Constitution to something that by today's standards would be unconstitutional, do you think that it's not going to happen? No. It's because pieces of paper like that are creations of the society in which they exist. They don't exist outside of the democratic process. Democratic process rules, and that's that. So what we're going to do in Alberta is we're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money educating people as to the benefits and merits of Alberta independence. And of course, the rationale behind the idea. We're going to go door to door. We're going to go to every event. We're going to go everywhere there's people. We're going to be on the radio. We're going to be in the newspapers. We're going to be on podcasts. We're going to be everywhere you look. We're going to be on billboards on the side of the road. And we are going to put out the facts about Alberta independence and let the people decide, because that's how democracy works. And if you are a proponent of Alberta sovereignty or Alberta independence, you have a job to do as well. You need to know these facts. You need to get to know them so that when you have the conversations, you can explain to people or quell their fears about the unknown of Alberta independence. You need those facts. You need that knowledge as a background. The other thing that we need you to do that we can't do is you need to start having these conversations with the people in your circle of trust. I can't go and convince somebody to get on board with the idea of Alberta independence, somebody who has already made an emotional barrier to hearing the facts because of the way they feel about the question. I can't do that, but you can. With the people that know you, the people that trust you, the people within your circle of trust, you can have those conversations from a place of trust that already exists. I have to earn that trust from people. And, quite frankly, there's a lot of people that I'm unable to earn that trust because they view me as a dirty separatist. But you might be someone's brother or mother, or sister, father, whatever, and you can have those conversations. You can break that barrier down. And if you have the facts and you have the knowledge to base your foundation of your reason for what being an Alberta sovereigntist, you can win those people over. And that's what we have to do. This ruling, this Feasby decision here, is one more tool that we have in our arsenal as to why an independent Alberta must happen. I wrote a blog couple 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe longer. It's all a blur now that I'm 46. And it was titled Alberta Independence Necessary and Inevitable. I do believe that it is necessary and inevitable. It has to happen. This world is slipping into chaos and just absolute ridiculousness, and it's happening fast. Any of you who have been to Europe or following the news in Europe, you're seeing it. You're seeing it. They're a few years ahead of us. A couple years, oh man, it was like 4 years ago. A few years ago, I was in Holland talking to farmers who were having their land taken by the government in the name of biodiversity. They were being forced off their land through regulation and taxation, just made it impossible for them. When I was there 4 years ago, 3,000 farms had already been annihilated by the government. And those people were never allowed to farm again. There's all sorts of things like that going on. In England right now, in Britain, there's a man who has just been sentenced to life in prison because he refuses to call a man a woman. This is how far it's going. This country has lost 50%, over 50% of the value of our currency in 10 years. In 10 years. So the list goes on and on and on about why Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. I say it's necessary for some of the reasons I just mentioned. And it is inevitable because eventually, if we don't get this done before, things are going to get so bad that people stop talking and they start fighting. And that's how the change is going to happen. We've seen that a number of times across history. They are stains on our collective historical reference. And I don't want to see that. We can see the things coming. We know it needs to change, and we can do that. I've been working on a project for the last little bit, the initial stages of how we're going to mobilize an army of 16,000 plus volunteers to spread the message of Alberta independence. I'm going to be working very, very hard on that from now until we're independent. But there's going to be some things happen in a very short period of time. My Christmas present to you folks is going to be an event in January 10th. We're going to have an event, and it's going to be the kickoff to the referendum campaign. It's going to be the kickoff that gets all of these people together in a room or online and starting to arm themselves with the knowledge about Alberta independence, how to talk to people, what we're going to do, how we're going to spread this message, how we're going to make sure that we reach every man, woman, and child and dog in this province and bring them over to the side of Alberta independence. Our premier is doing exactly what she said she was going to do. Our premier she campaigned on the Alberta Sovereignty within United Canada Act, right? She said she thinks it can work. She thinks we can fix these things. We're going to do all these things and we're going to fix it. That's what she's doing. She has very recently, changed the legislation that would have prevented us from holding a referendum or an independence referendum because the wording was wrong. She changed that. She has said, if the will of the people wants this, I will facilitate because I'm a servant of the people. That's what she's doing. But it's not going to be her job or the party's job to pursue Alberta independence. It's going to be their job to facilitate the will of the people. That means that you and you and you, and yes, you with the hair and me have to do everything in our power to make sure that the will of Albertans reflects a sovereign, independent nation by which, or for which, we have a constitution that's for us, that we write. Not one written by British loyalists and penned in London, which ours was, by the way. Not something designed to protect the economic and intellectual property of Canada for the crown because we don't want to get absorbed. No. We're going to do this for us. And this is going to be a first for any Canadian. There is not one person in Canada throughout the entire history of Confederation that did this. There was never a time when the people said, we are going to declare we are an independent nation, we're going to write a constitution, and we're going to govern ourselves accordingly. It was never like that. It's even worse for Alberta and Saskatchewan. Alberta and Saskatchewan didn't even get to decide if we were going to join Confederation. Ottawa passed a piece of legislation that created the provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan out of the Northwest Territories and said you're now part of Canada. That's what happened to Alberta and Saskatchewan. Nobody in this provinces or this country has ever been asked the question. And nobody in this country has ever sat down and written a constitution that protects the people from the government. It's always been the government of the day telling the people how they can act. And an independent Alberta is going to change that. It's not going to change it if we allow the opposing side to use things like this, the Feasby ruling, as a weapon against us. It is so critically important that you read these things and understand them. And if you don't understand them, talk to somebody who does. Because I see on the internet right now, the other side is celebrating. They're saying, oh, we're going to shut down the referendum. No, they don't get it. This is just another tool in our chest to achieve independence. And all you got to do is read it without the emotional barriers. Anyhow, I got to go. I have things to do. This wasn't part of my day today. I just really needed to come on and make sure that I put something out that tried to shed some light on this ruling. So to recap, no, this does not prevent a referendum on independence. No, this does not mean that treaties or that treaty Indians have any type of a veto. It doesn't. No, it doesn't mean that because we're not doing, we don't want to be governed by the current constitution, that we can't ask for a new one. It means none of those things. All it's saying is that had the government not changed the legislation itself that gets the referendum question on the table wouldn't have allowed that specific question. But I will point this out. Just because the Citizens Initiative referendum or the Citizens Initiative Act wouldn't have allowed this question to be asked to the people of Alberta, this does not apply to the Premier, and it does not apply to Cabinet or the government. The government can propose any referendum question they want at any time. That's reality. So, and that's important to note. This isn't a ruling on the Canadian Constitution. This is a ruling on a piece of legislation that our provincial government that we can influence enacted. And we have influenced them because they removed the roadblock. Okay, now I'm really leaving. I'm really getting back to work. I'm going to leave this up there for a moment if you want to just stare at it for whatever weird reason. But thank you for watching. I will certainly be back for more. And one of the jobs that I have to do today that I still haven't started is I'm scheduling some very interesting guests for the podcast coming up. One of which I hope is, well, I'm not going to tell you. I can't tell you because if it doesn't happen, I don't want you to feel let down. Anyway, back to work. Have a great day, folks. See you later. Oh, and I will see you again in Tofield tomorrow night at the Tofield something. It's on the Alberta Prosperity Project website. And it is right here. I'm just working on it right now. Toefield Arena, 4748 53rd Ave, Toefield, Alberta. I will be there speaking on the topic of Alberta independence. I will be taking your questions and live streaming as well. So please join me there in Toefield tomorrow. And it's, 7 o'clock? Yeah, 7 o'clock. If you can't, then join me on the live stream and ask your questions. But one way or another, get involved. Have a great day, everyone. See you tomorrow. I'll see you tonight, but I'll see you tomorrow in person if you go to Toefield. Don't forget to go to Toefield tomorrow. Meow. That QR code up there, that's my website. Check out my blog, buy my merch, please. Helps me travel around the province, advocating for Alberta independence.